Today we are focusing on hormonal imbalances. And next week, our show will be centered around children's health. So if you have any questions on that topic, please send them in. You don't need to be afraid. You can handle this. And here's how you do it.
The Ask Dr. Mom Show.
Welcome to the Ask Dr. Mom Show, episode 6. To start this morning, I want to lay some groundwork so that as I answer the questions for today, they will make sense and we can refer back to this foundation. When I had my midwife practice, I used to be fairly strict about the things that my mothers were doing during their pregnancy, because if we were planning for a home birth, then I wanted to make sure that all of the odds were being stacked in our favor. So I had several strong suggestions that I would make for my mothers. The first one was I wanted at least 50% of their diet to be made up of live food. And I showed them that this is really easy to do if we focus on fruit in the morning and then we focus on vegetables such as salads and nuts and seeds in the afternoon. And then by the time dinner time rolls around, they can have pretty much what they would consider a normal dinner, and they have automatically made half of their diet live. The second thing that I wanted them to do was to be on a good natural prenatal supplement, something like the Mama Bear prenatals. The next thing I wanted them to do is to take wheat germ oil capsules twice a day. Now, I don't have the time to get into the reasons that I did all of these different supplements today. We will get into that in further episodes. I'm just laying some groundwork right now. The next thing I wanted them to do was to take a tablespoon of liquid chlorophyll morning and evening. I wanted them to drink a quart of red raspberry leaf tea every day and to make sure that they were getting at least 2 quarts of water. The last thing that I recommended as far as supplements go is trace minerals, but those are now included in the Mama Bear prenatals. And I wanted them to get exercise. I wanted them to walk a mile every day. So with this foundation, let's move into question number 1.
Stella Sokol said or asked, for the past 2 years I've had intermittent periods and want to get pregnant. Everything has checked out. I'm estrogen dominant is all that was found. What can I do? I'm so confused by all the contradictory information. Diet, certain vitamins.
Stella, I know this can be an extremely frustrating time when you want to get pregnant, want to have a baby, and nothing is working. Unfortunately, it's happening more and more with a lot of women. And in my opinion, a lot of this can be contributed to our diet. If there are too many animal products, if there are too many processed foods, if there's too many fast foods, all of these types of foods carry a lot of chemicals. And when we take them into our body, it plays absolute havoc with our own chemistry. It also causes an extremely acidic environment, which can be hostile to the sperm. If you are estrogen dominant, then you have a hormonal imbalance, which actually leads me into the next 2 questions. So stay with me, Stella. We're going to move into the next 2 questions, but we're going to stay on the same topic. Question number 2.
Question number 2, Vivian Mendez asks, can you give me an answer on how to cure PCOS? My daughter suffers from this disease. You're a true miracle. Thank you so much.
Viviana, polycystic ovarian syndrome also tends to be caused by hormonal imbalances. So whenever I'm dealing with anything that has to do with hormones, just like we discussed with Stella in question number 1, the very first thing I always address is the diet. In my opinion, that's the very first thing that we have to get balanced and clean up if we're going to get the chemistry in the body back where it needs to be. The second thing that I would look at is bringing in an herbal supplement. Now, if we are dealing with a teenager, the one that I would bring in is the Hormonal Help Stage 1. I would use it 3 times a day, and I would take 2 capsules of wheat germ oil with it 3 times a day. If I am dealing with someone a daughter or someone who is in their childbearing years, then I would use the Hormonal Help Stage 2. And again, I would take it 3 times a day with the wheat germ oil. Now, years ago, when I first started studying herbal medicine and alternative health, I had some severe hormonal imbalances. And so I started using a hormonal formula, but in those days, we didn't have wheat germ oil in capsules. Wheat germ oil was only in its liquid form. So when I tried to use the wheat germ oil, I found out that it was really nasty, and I just absolutely could not handle it. I even tried dipping fresh produce in it, like taking tomatoes or cucumbers or something, dipping it in the oil and trying to take it that way. And all I did was ruin perfectly good produce. It was just nasty, nasty stuff. So I stopped taking it, and I just used the hormonal formula. Well, I went to a teacher I had at the time, and I said, "Why isn't this formula working? I've been doing this for 3-4 months now, and nothing's happening." And he said, "Are you following the instructions? Are you taking the formula and the wheat germ oil?" And I said, "No, that stuff is nasty." And he said, "Well, if you're not going to follow the instructions, how can you expect to get the results?" What he explained to me is that the herbs are there as building blocks to help give us the elements that we need to create the hormones. The wheat germ oil helps that chemistry to take place so that our body can actually create the hormones we need and start to bring them back into balance. Fortunately, today, some genius has put wheat germ oil into capsules, and so we no longer have to taste it or experiment the way I did. Okay, now let's add in question number 3.
Lydia Marquez asks, "Hi, for the last several months I have been having a period almost every 14 days. Sometimes it is a full, complete period, and other times it is not. I have also been having cold sores every month, and I am not sure what has triggered all of this. Please help."
Lydia, if I was going to take a wild guess, I would say you're under a lot of stress. And the reason I'm saying this is because years ago, back in the early 80s, I was going through a divorce, and I started doing the same thing you're doing. I was under an extreme amount of stress, and I started cycling every 2 weeks. I finally was getting so exhausted and didn't know what was going on, so I went to my OBGYN and said, "What's up with this? Why am I cycling every 2 weeks?" And when he got to the bottom of it, he explained to me that this is actually a survival mechanism that is programmed into mammals. If we come under too much stress, our reproductive system is not necessary for our own personal survival. It's necessary, of course, to carry on the species, but it's not necessary to our personal survival. And so our body will actually shut it down, meaning that we no longer ovulate. And because we're not ovulating, we start cycling every 2 weeks. Now, it's also a mechanism designed to protect our young from coming into a stressful environment. So, if I was dealing with that today, knowing what I know now, going back to the first 2 questions we just answered, the very first thing I would do is take a good look at my diet. How much live food am I eating? We build life with life. And so, in order to feel alive, to be alive, we need to take in those live enzymes. So I would take a look at how much live food is in my diet. The second thing I would do is start exercising. And usually if you're under a lot of stress, if you're depressed, if you're overwhelmed, exercise is typically one of the last things we feel like doing, but it's one of the most important times to add it in. Even if it's just getting out and walking every day. It helps to build endorphins. It helps to relieve stress. We tend to breathe deeper and take more oxygen into the cellular level. I would make sure that I was drinking plenty of water, which for a woman is somewhere around 3 quarts at least a day in order to stay hydrated. I would also add in some of the hormonal support formulas that we have been talking about. And I would program into my day. Now, by saying that, I mean actually schedule it. Because it is true. If we fail to plan, we plan to fail. So figure out a time every day where you can just have quiet time. Go for a walk, meditate, take a yoga class, do something to start managing the stress levels and bringing peace back into your life. Okay, let's move to question number 4.
Jesse Sunshine asks or says, I have a question. What would you recommend for a pregnancy that is abnormal? I would like nutritional and herbal support for further prevention.
Okay, Jesse, as if you've been watching the show up to this point, you can tell that the whole show has been on this exact foundation that you're asking about. We need to look at our diet. We need to look at exercise. We need to look at supplementation. We need to bring in hormonal support and quiet time. When I had my midwife practice, all of those elements were included in our program, along with certain no-nos. I had very strict rules on things that I absolutely would not allow if we were considering a home birth. And some of those included absolutely no alcohol, no drugs, prescription or otherwise, because I felt if people needed to be on any type of drugs, they probably should have the emergency backup of the hospital. So, no alcohol, no drugs, no cigarettes, no carbonated drinks. Oddly enough, that was one of the hardest ones for a lot of women. But the truth is, when we decide to bring a child into the world, even before that child is conceived, we need to take responsibility for this new life. We can do that by making sure that the child we are carrying and ourselves are being taken care of. Meaning that too many times we're pregnant, we're busy, maybe we have other children we're involved with, and so we're constantly on the go. Go, 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 go. Take care of everybody else, but we're not taking time to focus on us. When you are pregnant, You are in a construction mode. You are building a body for a new human being. That body is drawing nutrients from its mother. The only way it can do that is if we are purposely making sure that we are getting all of the nutrients that we need and that this child needs. Along with our diet and our supplementation, we need exercise. Maybe we can bring in essential oils for relaxation. And one of the most important things we need to do is feel and express our gratitude every single day for this incredible miracle that is happening in our life. Every child, even if this is a situation where you're not going to be able to keep the child, every child has the right to come into this world knowing that they are loved, that they are cherished, and that they are wanted. They know this by our attitude, our thoughts, and the things that we express to them every single day. We are out of time. This is the Ask Dr. Mom Show. I'm Sandra Ellis, and if you would like questions answered next week on any type of childhood challenges, please submit them below.